Hello, everybody. This is Thiago from EMA. We are going to be starting our webinar in a couple of minutes. We are going to allow now for people to log in from all over the world. We would like you all to introduce yourself now and to tell us where you're logging in from. So just say hello and which country are you in right now. So we have Tom. He's sending us greetings from Manchester, United Kingdom. Felix is now in South Africa. Yanan is from Iraq, and he's currently representing Iraq as a country representative. Sophie, our good friend Sophie, is now in Estonia. Our country representative for Tajikistan, Badalov, is now in Hungary. Sharma is now in Germany. My friend Petar Kojic is now in Serbia. Then Yanan is logging in from France. So Pauline is joining from Manila, Philippines. And Salis is in Trinidad. Now we have more people. We are going to be starting then. Today we have Pavan, the president of EMA, Lucia, the vice president of EMA, and also Georgiana, the representative of EMA at EASA. We are going to be covering two main topics. I would like to invite Pavan then to take the floor and to introduce today's activity as well. So thank you. And Pavan, can you say hello?
Hi everyone, very good afternoon and good evening for those of you, or also good evening from wherever you're there, whichever part of the world. And thank you very much for making it for this webinar. And it was a very good one during the morning, and we had some very interesting questions and discussions around. I hope that this also goes around in the same direction. So this discussion is split into two phases. The first one, we're going to discuss about what is the forthcoming EMA structure, which is being proposed now, and what is being discussed right now at the steering committee level. And then we'll take in your inputs. We had a lot of good inputs in the morning. We're going to take in the inputs, and then we're going to develop kind of a first draft, which will be open for all the EMA members, not only you guys who are attending the webinar, but also the ones who are there in EMA, to give us the feedback. And then we will hopefully develop the internal statute amendments, etc., on our article changes to meet that, and hopefully we'll showcase the same in the General Assembly, the physical event, hopefully sometime this year. And the second phase, we have Georgiana representing the ESA board, and also Lucia, vice president and also part of ESA board. Georgiana will be basically talking about the changes in the funding mechanism at the ESA level, and Lucia will be helping in whenever if needed for Georgiana. So I just have a few slides, so please feel free to write in your questions at any point of time. Some of you attended the morning session, so you know how this works. So hopefully looking forward to hear some good feedback from you guys. So regarding the current structure, you all are aware about that this structure has been functioning or been developed since 2006, and it's been more than a decade. This current structure has been evolved. As you all know that right now in the steering committee, we are 7 members who are taking care of all the service teams and also the presidential team there. And then we have the chapters, which also consist of the country representatives. We used to be 4 members in the ESA board. Right now it's reduced to 2. Networks, they work independently, but they are also kind of, in terms of activity, has been not super proactive, but something we are working on. And then we have program representative, the PR net, where active members or active PRs for each of the master's courses are part of this. And then we have CQAB, which basically takes care of the student advisory and the quality assurance itself. So this particular structure was kind of satisfying, or was quite good for how the EMA functioning used to exist before. But right now we are working on a mechanism, especially now that we have become a legal entity since 2015, and also with the being the under the umbrella association of ESA, things need to change for our own sustainability. So with that keeping in mind, and also we had a lot of feedback from you guys when we sent out the survey, like how you would like to see EMA in future for each one of you. And based on those feedbacks and inputs, and also based on our own discussions internally, we have come up with a new structure. This is just a draft. This is just a thinking. And I think this was quite appreciated in the morning, this kind of a thinking by many of you. Hopefully you guys who are listening now, who are new attending this session, also will feel the same. So here is the proposal. Currently, we have 5 steering service team coordinators and then president and vice president. We would like to move a bit different from the same, and the why we want to do this is to make it much more professional, and also, as Yasmin mentioned in the morning, we would like to be more as a non-profit professional organization more than a student organization. So right now EMA is kind of seen as a student enrollment organization, but rather the whole the potential of what we can offer kind of benefits and support, it's not really realized. So keeping that in mind, we would like to change the kind of structure what we have. So the idea is to move away from the coordinators to directors. So the proposal is that we would like to bring in the elements of community development, PRNet, which were never really given a voice in the steering committee, them, and also some aspects of professional development team into one section or one unit called students and alumni relation. And then the idea is to keep all the activities together in a joint formation, because now most of them do the activities individually in a silo, but the communication is very less, but the activities are very similar. So keeping in that mind, we would like to merge all these sectors together. So this we would like to have as a one unit itself. And then communications, which is functioning very well, we would like to keep it as it is, but also we would like to merge the new IT team, what we have developed, into the communications itself. In this way, we would be able to keep on doing all the good work what communication is doing, but also have a good IT support, especially with the new project management tool. We have Beatrix and like now the GoToWebinar and all the other IT solutions what we have for our members will be part of this particular team. So this is the second unit. And the third unit is the international cooperation and external relation. So right now, this is where the biggest change is coming in, because most of the others will be more or less what's happening, but putting in a bit of structure. But regarding the chapters, we would like to make it a bit more visible and much more going localized. I'm going to explain that in the coming slides. But right now, many of the chapters are not functioning effectively the way it is. Many of the chapters are quite big in terms of the region, but we have very few members who are actively engaged. So we would like to make much more activities at the ground level. So we would like to have close collaboration with Marie Curie Association, and also we would like to include the Action to Erasmus Mundus members who are not part of Erasmus Mundus Association today. We would like to work very closely with them. And in this way, we would like to develop a local hub, a regional hub, and a national level hub within the so we will move away from the usage of the word chapters, but it will be more about regions and local hubs, etc., based on the city or based on the country, like that. And for those who are country representatives, we would be moving from that name to something called ambassadors. And in this way, it's much more visible, and also it gives an opportunity for more than one person in a particular region or a country to apply, because our idea is to move away from this whole thought of elections to more voluntary management. And I think that's what the key focus will be. Within this, right now, Lucia is working very proactively, and many of you have been contributing to the partnerships and sponsorship. So she has taken the director role for that right now. So we will continue this particular activity within the international cooperation and external relation. In the last 7-8 months, we have managed to forge over 20 different partnerships with different stakeholders, but we are now developing different kinds of sponsorship packages and collaboration packages, which would be useful for our members and also for external partners. In this way, we will be able to work on many different projects. That's something I would like to show in the next slide. That's the fourth unit, which is the projects and secretariat, or say international project and secretariat, where the team will be mainly working on projects completely on. We did manage to apply for several projects and tenders. We were not successful, but we really see that there's a lot of talent pool within EMA which is untapped. And through this particular specific unit, we will be able to empower and execute many different activities. So the idea is that, of course, there will be a directors for these roles, but then there will be several team leaders for different activities. In that way, everybody will have one or the other role to play. And some of the roles could be for 6 months, some of the roles could be for a couple of years. So it's kind of a very flexible, dynamic system, what we try to develop here. And the treasury and the internal affairs, it will not be part of the steering committee moving forward, but it will be part of the presidential team. So the team that will be consisting of 2 or 3 people, they will work very closely with the presidential team, especially on the legal aspect, on the statute amendments, and anything regarding the whole legality of our non-profit international organization itself. ESA board, as you know, there is already Lucia, who is constituting one half of it, and then Georgiana. So they will be working very closely with the presidential team on the ESA objectives. And something we would like to establish that's been discussed in the last few years and also in the previous steering committee is an advisory board, which will be consisting of the EMA leaders, the previous leaders to begin with. And then I think we will open up this advisory board also for external people who are from industry, universities, etc. The idea of having advisory board is that in the coming future, we would like to move away from this concept of elections for the key roles into more of selection, like a transparent, independent selection for the key roles. I think one of the best way, which example was now the selection of the ESA board member itself. I think this is a very good way to really pick the right candidates who fit in the bill, and this also ensures that the right candidates apply and not necessarily anybody apply and then election decides who is what, because these are something which is very important roles. So we really need to ensure that the quality people take in these responsibilities. So that's something we would like to move away in the future on these roles. Moving to my last slide, at least on the chapters. So as I mentioned, some of the chapters are not at all active. So we are working on a mechanism to kind of change the chapter structure. So those will be the chapters we will first target as a pilot, where we'll be developing this local hub, national hub, and then regional hub between chapters. And we are actually currently based, international headquarters is in Brussels. We only have a virtual office, but the idea in the long run, hopefully in a year or two, is to have a physical office established through our projects itself. So I think I was a bit quick here, but hopefully it's been useful. At least gives a general crux about what are the big changes when it comes to the structure. And I think this is very key for us, especially with so many inactive processes. And as you all know, that we are running with zero budget since September last year. And right now we have a new service provider who's been agreed on for the ESA. And we will start soon having some budget and funding that will be elaborated by Georgiana in her presentation. But I think irrespective of that funding existing or not, we should start becoming much more sustainable. We did establish EMA Secretariat, which is functioning okay. And this structure hopefully will give us that kind of an ambition to move progressively, irrespective of if we get the funding from the European Commission or not. With that, I think I would leave the floor open for any questions specifically on the EMA structure. Any of you have any questions on or suggestions, something which we haven't really looked into, feel free to ask now.
Hello, Pavan. This is Thiago. I think while we wait for some question here, I can suggest one question that we had this morning. For instance, when if someone is a country representative and then they hear you talking about changing the role of country representative and so on, sometimes people are a bit confused. So maybe you could give that one example. What exactly is your vision for what could happen to the role of country representative in specific?
Yeah, I think regarding the country, there will be no change in the role. I think it will be more like giving a professional title to their role and also making it more election free, but rather a motivation friendly role. So if people are motivated and they really want to share or make a promotion of Erasmus Plus and really want to uplift their country profile and also to reach out to their people, I think everybody should be given an opportunity. So in that way, we'll open up this for people, and then we hopefully see the number of people who apply for that kind of ambassador role. but we, as I said in the morning, we will send out an email to the people asking them if they would like to continue in this role. And if they're happy, then we'll say that we are just going to change the title, but the work is going to be same at this point of time. But slowly over a period of time, we will also, maybe Lucia can explain a bit on the voluntary management, the agreement, what is being developed, like now the contract. Based on that, we will have some kind of a goal and task setting for each of the volunteers to have some accountability for them to be volunteers, active volunteers in EMA. And in this way, we're going to change this kind of structure slowly.
Okay, so yes,
maybe Lucia,
if I can then, yes, sorry, yes. So I can just briefly talk about how we're going to assure that the people who have been selected to the roles are actually somehow monitored, or how we're going to ensure the quality. We are trying to now develop the whole new system, how we're going to work with our volunteers. So we are working on having an official agreement with all our volunteers who are holding positions. These agreements will also define what is the minimum expectations of the role, and what would be, let's say, the way of dismiss somebody from the role if something may happen. And we think that this might help a little bit to give more ownership to the role, and making it more professional for the volunteers, and also give them opportunity to learn some real skills and be accountable for their role. But it's also going to be a tool for us to eliminate the volunteers who are not active and who don't contribute, and give more space to those who really want to contribute and actually achieve something and learn something through this experience. So that's what we're trying to do. And also we feel like if there is a selection process, then more people can really put it in front their skill, and it's not so much election based, whereby we sometimes have seen this we saw this in the past, where people elected somebody or because that somebody had a big network of people, but not necessarily the right person for the position with right motivations or maybe skills. So we're gonna more entrust it into the hands of some specific experts who will be able to select hopefully right people, and then if they're not right, then we will have a tool or a mechanism in place that's going to allow us to change these people and their roles, or change them based on non-performance, etc. So you can also expect a bit more news about that, but it's going to be a slower process. But we have a legal team working on the agreement right now, and you might see this quite soon coming up as well.
And I think a follow-up question, we have a question from Janan asking if Iraq and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would be together. I think maybe one of the questions that could come up here based on Pavan's presentations is if you guys have considered changing, let's say, the country, the current division of the chapters, as in, you know, Latin America, and then you have India and so on. Yeah, regional hubs. Did you think of any change to the current structure of the chapters?
Yeah, thanks, Thiago. I think regarding the chapters will not, like the names of the chapters, we will not have this 12 specific chapters, but rather we will start having local hubs. Say that one local hub is Paris, one of the local hub is Berlin, Oslo, Myanmar. Like that, we were going to develop lots of local hubs in collaboration with Marie Curie Association and also with our Action 2 members. So that will be the first step. And then the second one will be the national level hubs. In that, it could be, if the country is super active, they can have specific country specific hubs. And then we can have, like, say, South Mediterranean or Europe, or that kind of a region. That's something we need to discuss. And that has to be a bottom-up approach. We will develop some kind of a requirement and guidelines and formulations of how this hubs will be. It's like moving from phase A to phase 5 or 6. It's basically depending on the active members, depending on how everyone is progressing in that particular region or country, that's how these are going to be developed. Right now, it seems like it's a bit more top down and it doesn't really work. A lot of people have positions and nothing really happens, but hopefully when we do bottom up, that means that people are interested and that's where they would like to start something like that. So we will move away from this whole chapter thing, but rather build it up from a ground level
based on the activities and active members. So within a same city, we could have, like within the same country, I don't know, like United States has several states. Within the same state, they could have several different hubs, for example. And same goes to Europe. Say within Italy, we could have so many different hubs.
Perfect. Lucia, I don't know if you have access now to the questions. Maybe you could address the next one.
Yes. I just wanted to also mention that in terms of regions, I think what we have also discussed was that we would like to align, if there is anything happening in terms of regional cooperations, we would probably align with the strategy that the European Commission has at the moment and how they see different regions around the world, because it makes sense strategically for EMA and for our members to participate in those different initiatives. So for instance, we have right now, just to give you an example, we have right now African chapter and we have Middle East chapter. But for instance, in terminology of European Commission, we have Southern Mediterranean as a separate region, which overlaps the two chapters. So maybe we're gonna look into putting people regionally in those regions that are created right now by European Commission in terms of contributing to, let's say, things around higher education in those regions, because it would just make more sense. So that could be one of the ways how we're going to see it. And then if Tiago, you meant question, which is from Galit, I guess.
Yeah, there are two questions from him, and then there is a question also from Armando. Because I think right now, Pavan, can you also see the messages, or that distracts?
Yeah, I can. Just to answer to Galit, yes, definitely. There seems to be overlap, and as I said, this is just a first draft, and we are working on improving it. We would ensure that there is no overlaps and there is a very clear distinction about who does what. Of course, some of the tasks it might have to be done jointly with several teams, which happens even in a professional world. But I think here we would like to have a clear division and accountability of work, along with the key actions which one needs to achieve in a given point of time. You said that you're concerned about having a local hub in North America, as there's so few Erasmus alumni in the continent total. There are not enough alumni to hubs in each state. No, the thing is, it doesn't have to be in each state or each region or whatever. As I said, it completely depends what is developed or what is the current scenario in a particular chapter. So right now, if there is nothing can be established regionally, then or locally, then only the national level hub will still exist. But we need to also ensure that somehow it needs to be more open. What we're trying to say is that the local hubs, say that somebody's in New York, even it could be 1-2 people, they can establish that, and through them it could be that we open up doors for anyone who is interested to know more about Erasmus Plus or Marie Curie. So I understand your problem, but I think we need to just also maybe give it a try and see how it functions. If it doesn't, then we can, for these kind of chapters, which is quite big, then we can just try to keep the national level functioning. But we need to somehow activate activities in the best possible manner, even with a few alumni. With Armando, yeah, this is a similar structure with how ESN is functioning, but the only differentiated thing is that, of course, we'll also open it up with, we'll try to establish the same with Marie Curie Association. Also, we'll include the Action 2 members, because most of the Action 2 members are back in their respective countries. So that's the thinking. It is similar to the ESN structure. And the question from Firdavs, I think the problem is that they're not really aware about the specific roles and responsibilities and the people. I mean, some of the delegations are very active in engaging our members, our CRs, but some of the delegations are not. So I think when we make these proposed changes, we'll also circulate this kind of an information to all delegations through the European Commission, and in that way we hope to make them very clear on how we can get the benefit.
Sorry if I can jump in here.
Yeah, sure.
For a bit, because we were just in the meeting with EU delegations in Brussels and with the European Commission, and we've been having some conversation going on this particular matter for some time now. So there is a team that is working on preparing sort of like a brochure to European delegations about what EMA can do together with them. And also I know from European Commission that there will be an initiative from them, from their side. So Director General of Education and Culture, to prepare sort of like guidelines and types of events that the delegations are encouraged to do together with the alumni. So there is a push from European Commission and from our side, but I agree with you that sometimes there is reluctance. If that any time happens to you that you can't contact with the delegation or there is some reluctance, please just come to us privately, and we will try to ask the European Commission to introduce EMA and the country representative in that space directly, which has worked in the past with some delegations. So we are aware of this problem, and European Commission is happy to introduce our country representatives to all the delegations. Sometimes what happens, although, is that even though we share this information with delegations, they don't really read it when they receive the email. So that happens a lot too. So they receive the information, but they have never noticed or read that information. So it's kind of like we have to do the continuous education about it. But there are definitely steps taking place in order to improve this. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Or yeah, Tom, I think only the organizers can see the questions. That's a reason. But I think Tom, Tiago will share all the questions with all of us later. Next question, Janan. I think that's the idea, is that once we start developing these local hubs, hopefully these local hubs will be in close collaboration with this university in Iraq. In that way, that we would be able to work closely with them, volunteer with the university to develop joint activities. So I think establishing this kind of a local hub gives a bit of flexibility for the person who has a contact with the university already, which makes it easier to develop or promotional activities with the universities.
Pavan, I'm not sure you mentioned the campus Erasmus Mundus.
No, you go
idea.
ahead. Yeah.
So to just give you a little bit more of the background, what we're trying to do here. So we have started a pilot in the Philippines with our Southeast Asian chapter, where the members were very proactive and proposed actually establishing something called Campus Erasmus Mundus, which is exactly like a local chapter or a university chapter, we can even say. So they approached universities and different partners, and they pitched them the idea of having a small space. So it's very similar to what ESN has in Europe. So to have a small space, especially at universities, to help them reach to the students, to explain them about possibilities of Erasmus Plus, but also offer other interesting things for the students in those campuses. So it has been working quite well in the Philippines. So we're going to try to put some information together, and then also, of course, when the time comes to establish these local representations, then we will be happy to help with advice. We don't know whether it's going to work for every region and every country in the same way. We are aware of lots of different things that come into this, politics, etc. But this is the initial idea. And also this Campus Erasmus Mundus is open. What I forgot to mention, the volunteering, how we're trying to do it, is that we are not going to only have volunteers from within EMA, but we're going to open the volunteering opportunities for other volunteers as well. So maybe, let's say, bachelor level students who would like to volunteer and maybe get to know more about Erasmus Mundus, or meet people from Erasmus Mundus community. That's why we're also developing the volunteer agreement, so that we have some protection for, of course, sensitive things in EMA, etc. But we think this model is going to work very well, and also including Action 2 people. It is the same case. There is a lot of Action 2 people. It's about, if I saw the numbers right recently, it's about 60,000 people. And they want to be active on the ground, especially this is the case in the Philippines. That's why they are able to establish lots of Campus Erasmus Mundus projects around, because there is lots of potential and interest in doing so. So we are hoping that in some regions this is going to be quite a bit of people who could be interested in having some initiatives. So we're going to try to pilot this in other regions and other countries, and you're more than welcome to join this initiative and test it out whether it works or not in your region. That's all from me.
Thanks, Lucia. And just to continue the question thing, Armando, the implementation timeline, what we're looking is that we would now, based on all the inputs from Morning and also from you guys, we will try to change, taking some feedback. So we will hopefully by end of August, we'll have that first draft of the structure ready. We'll work closely with the IA team, and then that we would keep it open, wherein people from EMA, like all the volunteers, can give in their inputs. We will try to keep like 2 weeks or 15 days open where anybody can propose inputs or changes. And then we will have until mid-September or end of September to close this, so that the internal affairs will have enough chance to make these changes and accommodate these changes in October in the statute and in the internal articles itself. So hopefully, we're hoping that we will have our physical event, like almost like another GA, this time in Netherlands in November. We don't want to promise anything because we still don't know many things from the European Commission. We know that there's a new service provider, but things are still unclear. So hopefully if that happens, that's when we would like to vote on this. And then we will use the second term of our tenure as the steering committee to start implementing this phase by phase going forward. And hopefully by next year, this time around, most of the things should be implemented and in actual practice. Great, Daniel, that you are already doing something similar in your role as a CR. Sophie, your question, yes, we already have this in mind. We're working with Marie Curie and Garage Erasmus to establish this kind of a joint partnership and sponsorship with the university. Right now, we are working, Lucia has been mainly working with the external partners along with Theresia, our partnership manager, but the next step for us is to also start developing a concrete action plan for partnership with the universities itself. In that way, we will hopefully quickly generate a lot of money. Yeah, I think, Janan, this is where I think you could listen to Georgiana's presentation regarding how we could actually build the capacities, how ESA funding could be utilized to develop this kind of a mechanism for you to promote various activities on Erasmus. For us, completely agree. I think this is what we're moving towards, and this is exactly what Lucia also explained. So this is a good feedback. If you have something more detailed to write to us, please do write into Lucia. She'll be very happy to hear your feedback and suggestion on that. Glad, Sophie, that it's more clear on your end.
Maybe I'm just going to respond to Firdaus a little bit on the how to make the ambassadors more accountable and cohesive within the hubs. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to establish the whole unit to manage the EMA volunteers. So like a separate team, something like we could imagine it as something as like an HR department that is going to support all other teams with recruitment process of new volunteers, but it's going to also make sure that the onboarding is properly done for all these volunteers so that they understand how the organization functions, where are their resources, and they're going to basically support and be kind of like community engagement persons to make sure that these ambassadors are motivated, are taken care of, and are interested in. Because I think what we've seen so far is that sometimes, as everybody being volunteer, we don't really have so much time to dedicate to every single volunteer. If it concerns a team leader in particular. We're hoping that this additional team, this additional people will be able to follow up often with every volunteer in our organization to give them feedback, to support them, and to motivate them to move forward. Because once you're not in touch with anyone for a month, let's say, you might find it hard as a single person in some location to continue doing the work. So we're looking at those strategies as well. And I think now we can probably move on. I don't see any more questions here, Pavan. So Georgiana, I think we can give you the floor now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lucia. Georgiana, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on this call, and I'll just get right into it. Before I proceed, though, I would like to say that I will be taking questions throughout the presentation. So we won't be waiting until the end because I want to clarify things when we are talking about them. I'll be talking about 4 different clusters of funding. So I'll be taking questions after each separate cluster of funding. And please let me know if you have any clarification questions throughout the presentation. I'll try to be attentive to it and include them as they happen. But please don't try to ask questions about things that haven't been presented. So if you have a question throughout the presentation, please focus on what I just said or that have to do with the immediate thing I just said, so it's easier for me to follow. Next slide, please. Actually, next 2 slides, please. Or, yeah, 1 slide. So before I talk about the specifics of how you will apply for the funding, I want to give you a brief overview of the philosophy of the whole funding pool and how the money will be managed at the ESA level. So the idea we have at the moment is that we want to minimize top-down projects within ESA and try to distribute as much funding as possible to the member organizations and to individuals that have good ideas for projects. We're going to implement a funding scheme that's more developed at the ESA level that you will be able to tap into. Now, as an applicant, what you need to remember is that the main purpose of this funding scheme at the ESA level is to, not necessarily the main purpose, but one of the purposes of the funding scheme at the ESA level is to promote cooperation between member organizations within ESA. So for the most part, you will need to partner with another person that's a member of another ESA member organization in order to be eligible to obtain a grant. There are some exceptions to that, but think of this as a partnership scheme in which you have to primarily partner with another member of the ESA organization. These are Oceans, ESN, and Garage Erasmus. So these are the people you will have in mind when you think about projects and you think about applying for larger sums of money within the context of the EMA funding scheme. The other principle we have in this pot of money at the ESA level is that we want to be equitable in distributing the money towards all the member organizations in ESA. But we don't do it directly by splitting the money between the member organizations. We have an equitable 50-50 distribution between what we call program countries and partner countries. So if you think about the world, I won't go through the list, but program countries are essentially countries within Europe or neighboring countries within Europe for some projects. And then partner countries are essentially all the other countries in the world. So if you are in North America, you will be thinking mostly about partnering with Oceans, which is also another organization that has members in partner countries primarily. If you're based in Europe, you will be thinking mostly about partnering with ESN and with Garage Erasmus, because you will likely target program countries for whatever project you're proposing. So have these things in mind when you apply for funding. Now, we want to be able to give you the details of the application process, timelines, but we don't have that yet. And that's partially because there's been some delays with the new tender, and hopefully now that we have a decision, things will move quicker. We do estimate to start the funding scheme sometimes this fall, so all the details will be clear then. We'll also have a call for members of the task force that will essentially manage the funding scheme. And what you need to remember is that the evaluations of all the projects that are received for this funding scheme will be evaluated through a blind review process through a pool of experts. So if you yourself are interested in becoming an evaluator for projects, that will be a call that will be coming up soon. If you know other people that might be open to that, just nudge them to apply for this call that will be coming very, very soon. Okay. No, so I see a question asking what would the West Balkan Association qualify as a partner? No. So for the purpose of the ESA funding scheme for this fiscal year, the West Balkan Association would not qualify as a partner for eligibility purposes. That doesn't mean that you cannot partner with other organizations. You can partner with other organizations, but it doesn't meet the eligibility criteria for the larger funding schemes for this purpose. Okay, so the way we're going to distribute this funding is along topics. Think of these clusters as main topics that the European Commission and ESA would like to see happen in the world. And there are 4 of them for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. So the first of them is strengthening higher education quality. Second one is spreading Erasmus Plus and widening participation, essentially promotion. The cluster 3 is increasing social inclusion empowerment and participation. It's about equity stuff. And then the fourth one is about capacity building, and we'll be talking about each of them separately. So cluster one, Pavan, if you can change the slide. Okay, each cluster has multiple components that you can target to apply for. And these are the listed components for cluster one, for strengthening higher education quality. And I want to give some examples to each of them. So for component one, for increasing skill development, one of the possible projects you can think about is to create peer mentorship programs that promote skill development. So a lot of the things that currently happen through professional development, you can do through this component of cluster one. For component two, increasing the quality assurance of the program, you can think about creating projects that would better involve students in the quality assurance processes at universities. You can think about research topics that would cover quality assurance. You can think about partnership meetings between different stakeholders in quality assurance. I think what's important to note here is that a project doesn't have to be an event. It can be another type of activity that somehow promotes this purpose or component within the broader ESSA framework. For component 3, facilitate degree recognition, there are some current efforts within EMA at the moment, and I think EMA members would be very well positioned to apply for funding for this cluster. You can envision creating an international database where you have an inventory of all the processes and procedures to gain diploma recognition in different countries. And this will be a very useful tool for everyone who would be interested in having their diploma recognized in a different country. That's the sort of project you can apply for. And of course, everything is open to your creativity here. For component 4, facilitate equal access. This particularly refers to higher education quality. So when we talk about access here, we talk about higher education access. You can think of making video series featuring success stories in higher education access. You can think about research projects. You can think about programming that targets underrepresented students and facilitates their process to apply for university. You can think about creating some facilitating for underrepresented students to apply for Erasmus Mundus master courses. There are all sorts of projects you can think about in relation to this component. And the last one, component 5, is meant to increase employability. You can think about creating career trainings, for example, for different professions, or other type of, you can think about having interviews with employers that would highlight the type of skills they want, or you can think about having networking events that focus on employability. There are many types of projects that you can apply for this cluster. I want to see if there are any questions about cluster 1. I don't see any questions right now, so I'll go to cluster 2. Okay, so cluster 2, spreading Erasmus Plus and widening participation, is essentially what we have been referring in EMA to as promotion. There are different components here, but they all have to do with promotion in some shape or form. So I don't want to give too many examples here, because I think that's really what most projects within EMA have been about. It's about promotions to different universities, going to fairs, higher education fairs, going to all sorts of other events, and then talking essentially about Erasmus+. But they have different angles to the promotion aspect here. So, for example, for component 1, you can think about having seminars with different organizations that are between countries that have to do with international cooperation within higher education, but also a bit beyond higher education. So it doesn't have to be specifically about higher education here. I think the other thing I would want to mention here is that whenever you apply for a project that is meant to address cluster 2, you have to be aware that the main thing you are promoting is Erasmus+. So in your application, you should be very careful to make it very clear that your purpose is not only to promote EMA or Erasmus Mundus joint master degrees, but also to promote ESSA. Now, what you do in practice when you promote is a very different story, and that can be mitigated between you and your partner, and you can have, you can definitely highlight EMA on the ground and Erasmus Mundus master courses on the ground, and you're very encouraged to do that. But just be careful that the language in your proposal reflects the fact that you're promoting Erasmus+. Don't see any questions for this cluster either at the moment, so I'll go to cluster 3. Okay, so for cluster 3, this is essentially the equity cluster. It's increasing social inclusion, empowerment, and participation. For component 1, give voice to marginalized populations, you can think about creating a video series of the experience of marginalized students in higher education. You can think about creating an art exhibit that highlights marginalized populations. You can think about a research project in this topic. For component 2, facilitating cultural understanding across cultures, religion, and political divides. Again, this aligns very well with research projects. It aligns very well with intercultural competency trainings. It aligns well with bringing diverse groups together and discussing diversity. So webinars on this topic, seminars on this topic, research projects on this topic can be appropriate. For component 3, culture heritage, I don't know exactly what this will be about, and there will be deeper descriptions of this whenever you have the calls out. So you can, this is about planting the seeds in your head in relation to what you might want to do, but a more detailed language will be added to it by the task force that will manage the project scheme. But one of the things that EMA has to offer is, for example, you can think about a project that would bring our worldwide coffee breaks at EMA events to ESSA events or other events hosted by the European Commission. So sometimes projects can be large, sometimes they can be big. You don't have to change the world with your project. So think about whatever project would promote the things within a certain component. Now, in the first call for projects, all clusters and all components will be opened. If we have subsequent calls for projects, very likely we'll open those components and clusters that haven't been financed too much in the first cluster. So be strategic about what projects you apply for in the first cluster, because the second cluster might be open for, the second call might be open for less clusters or components. Okay, I'll go to cluster. I don't see any questions. Oh no, I do have questions. Oh, okay, when we can apply for funds, that's a question I received. I don't have a date yet, but definitely the moment the call will be out, we'll transfer the information to all the EMA members so you can be notified in due time. At the end of this presentation, I will receive the PPT. There's a form that you can complete with concept notes for projects, and Lucia and I have been giving feedback to these proposals. So you can think in advance about what projects you might want to do. We'll give you feedback, and then as soon as we have a date for the call, we'll let you know so you can apply in time. Okay, I have a longer question here. I'll try to read. It's about cluster 2. There are some partner countries where applications do not have access to other Erasmus Plus program, but only Erasmus Mundus joint master degrees. I was under the impression that American applicants, for example, are only eligible to apply for Erasmus Mundus joint master degrees, which would make promotion a wide variety of Erasmus moot point. Okay, so I understand. The essence here is that promotion of Erasmus Plus is moot for certain countries where you're not eligible to apply for other Erasmus Plus programs. It depends on who your stakeholder is. So if you're looking at students applying for mobility programs to Europe, you might be right, but there are all sorts of opportunities for universities to partner on research projects in relation to Erasmus Plus programs. So if you make a presentation to a university and you have administrators there, they might want to know about other Erasmus Plus initiatives and programs. But regardless of what would be the case, if you're really in a situation where it doesn't make sense for your audience to promote Erasmus Plus, generally speaking, I think you just need to make this very clear in your application for funding. So it doesn't seem like you're just about EMA. It seems like you're really aware of the situation and the needs of your stakeholders. So just make an argument for this in your project proposal, and I think it should be fine. Yeah, Marie Curie projects definitely would work. So yeah, that's an example that of an Erasmus Plus project that would be relevant for students in North America. Okay, there's another question here. Can we apply for ESSA funding a conference organized by a group of Erasmus Mundus students? If yes, which cluster does it fall upon? Okay, so this seems like a very specific question. I'll address that when we talk about research funding through EMA. Okay, did I talk about, no, it's cluster 4. I'm talking about cluster 4 right now. Here, the main purpose of cluster 4 is to develop the members of the organizations of ESSA and the member organizations themselves. So here, it's about creating, component 1 is about creating networking platforms and opportunities. Component 2 has to do with knowledge exchange opportunities. For example, you can think about a platform that would facilitate finding short-term housing in Asia for students, right? So you create things that would facilitate people's mobility experience, for example. Or for component 3, trainings and skill engagement to network members. One of the things that EMA would have to offer right now for other member organizations is the way we manage our projects via Beatrix, right? So you can imagine having some project that would try to bring Beatrix to the level of ESSA. That would be an example of a project here. For component 4, one of the big feedback elements we received from members of EMA has been that it's very difficult to identify partners within member organizations of ESSA. So for example, for component 4, one of the proposals you might have is to create a system or a platform where ESSA members can meet and find partners for the purposes of applying for ESSA funding. So this will be an example of how you can promote capacity development and solve a problem that we all have right now in relation to finding the right partners for the projects you will apply for. I have some questions here, so I'll try to go through them. Okay, so I have a long question from Daniel. I'll try to read through it. I understand more or less that we have to make partnership with other ESSA institutions to get the budget, or maybe other partners in order to have a $50% probably of the budget. I also understand that the kind of projects that we can do, but it would be possible to have the experience of a person that have already made such an event. At the moment, I feel that things are too difficult to get funding. I think here, the one thing we can help you with is if you have an idea and you write a concept note, we can provide you with feedback. And if you feel that you don't have the expertise for the project you're proposing, I think the first advice would be for you to reconsider if you want to conduct that specific project. And again, it doesn't have to be an event. But if you are keen on doing this and you think there's a real need for it, we can point towards individuals that have experience in that direction, and we can work with specifics later on. Okay, I don't have any more questions on cluster 4. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Sorry, isn't the next slide on project scheme sizes? Okay. Okay, so I want to talk a bit about, I talked about the types of topics you can apply for projects. And again, the projects don't have to be events. But what we need to remember also is that we have different sizes of the project scheme you can apply for. So if you are looking to fund a project that is low-key and requires less funding, that is what we call a small project scheme. If your project requires less than 1,500 euros. And for this type of project, you do not need to partner with another organization within ESSA. So this is the only project scheme open for local events or events where you don't have to partner with another ESSA organization. So that's something you can think closely about, but of course there's less money involved in it. So, and that won't be appropriate for all projects. A medium project scheme gets funding below 5,000 euros. And again, for this one, you need to partner with another member of an ESSA organization. For all the larger project schemes, the service provider is required to to cover the invoices of larger costs such as catering or accommodation. So you don't need to upfront all the money and wait for reimbursement for these larger project schemes. That's an advantage. The large project scheme is for projects above 10,000 euros. You see there is a gap between 5,000 and 10,000 there. This is how we've designed it so far. We don't see any reason to change it, but if there are any reasons, we might change it later on. And the same rules apply there. And for cross-cutting project schemes is above 15,000 euros. And this is not something that will be of high interest and won't be open to members per se. They will be decided by the ESA board level. But if you have any suggestions for larger projects, then you can approach us and we can discuss how those will go. But they will be more rare for sure. Next slide. Okay, so there was a question about the conference. I don't know if that was any type of conference that's academic or some sort of gathering between members for other type of purposes like networking. So I can't really answer the question of under which cluster would the conference application go. Technically, every cluster is open to a gathering or a conference, but it has the topic of the conference would need to be aligned with the cluster and the topic per se. So if you have more questions, you can give me more specific information and I can help you further. Unlike previous funding schemes within ESA, this fiscal year is open to research funding. So if you have a research project you want to fund through ESA, that is possible. There are some limitations on how the money on research funding can be used. You can't use it for salary, and you can't really use much of it for conference attendance. So you see the breakout there. That you can only use up to 20% of a small grant and up to 10% of a large grant for attending a conference. And the conference, again, needs to be, and the topic of the research needs to be aligned with the clusters and with the components of the clusters that we're looking at. I have some questions here, and I'll try to go through them and see if they're. Oh, so there's a question here asking what if the budget of a local event is less than 1,500 euros? That's okay. If you need 200 euros, you can apply for 200 euros. It doesn't have to be exactly 1,500 euros. You can apply for less than that, obviously. What do you mean by less than 1,500? So anything less than 1,500 would qualify in euros in terms of how much you request for the project would qualify as a small project scheme. Okay. Then there's another question here. Maybe it is not clear for me. So in case I do a small project scheme project, should I, for example, pay 1,500 from my own in order to, and it's reimbursed after that? So for invoicing, we can only invoice catering and accommodation. I don't know exactly what the situation with travel costs will be, but if it's something that's less difficult, that's more difficult to invoice, then we have to discuss you paying out of pocket and then being reimbursed afterwards. So yeah, that's something that you'll have to consider when you apply for funding. But more details will be clear when we have the funding call out on how the reimbursement will go and what can be paid by the service provider upfront. Okay, so if there's a typo on the PowerPoint, I apologize. I think there shouldn't be one. At least on my version of the PowerPoint, there is no cluster. It's smaller than 1,500. Okay, so I'll go to the next slide at the moment, and now I'll just wait for questions until the end. I won't take any more questions. We talked about examples as we gone through, but I just want to emphasize two projects that we have received as project proposals, and this might give you ideas of what you might want to do for your own applications for funding. For example, we received an application from Galit that she talks about organizing promotion events for Erasmus Plus at NAFTA regional conferences. These are conferences within North America that target higher education institutions, and they're very good places where you can scale your promotion not just to one university at one given time, but to many universities that can then disseminate your project. So if you can identify smart promotion spaces, that's definitely something that you can use for your promotion application projects. We've seen research proposals that target issues like degree recognition survey. Research projects are encouraged, surveys are encouraged, also other initiatives of this scale are encouraged within the funding scheme. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, that's it then. When you will see the PowerPoint, you can use the hyperlink in this slide to send your project proposal concept notes, and we will give you feedback for it. And now, if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to take them about any of this. There's one more thing I want to say, and that's not on the slides. From having seen some concept notes so far, it seems that many people think about their project as independent, singular events. That's not necessarily what the project scheme is about, and you probably would do yourself a service to think of them as broader projects as opposed to independent events. So if you know that you want to have 5 or 6 promotion activities within a given 6 months period, don't apply for funding for each of them independently. Apply for funding for all of them together, so you can plan for your fiscal needs throughout the year much better. So think about your strategic plan for your activity in the next year, and then based on that, think about what projects you can write to fund your strategic plan. And that's probably a better way to think about these applications, especially if you go through a trouble of finding a partner and you're looking for applying for broader, like bigger sums of money. That's definitely going to, one, help your application seem stronger and more thought through, and also will make your life easier. That's all I wanted to say. Any other questions?
Yes, I just wanted to maybe say that if that is not clear yet, this was one question from the morning, was that whether you can organize an activity or you can apply for a project if you don't have any of these partners in your country. Let's say you want to do something in Latin America, in a country or in some countries in Latin America, but you think that there is no one from any of the other networks or partner organizations in ESA. So you can do that still. There doesn't have to be anybody on the ground in the country where you're organizing the activity or as such, but it's important that this organization is involved in the project, and then you split the tasks within and responsibilities within the project as you wish. So usually what we did, let's say in Southeast Asia, where in some countries we have EMA members and larger membership, but there was no other organizations present in that country. I did partner with Oceans Network, for instance, and we did an event together. It was a discussion with higher education institutions and some civil society groups in order to facilitate the collaboration on Erasmus Plus projects. What we did was that myself on part, I presented on part of EMA and Erasmus Mundus opportunities, and then Oceans presented Erasmus Plus credit mobility opportunities. So that could be one way, but you could also think of it as you can have somebody present virtually. You can do also a virtual participation if that's not possible to have that person present at the event or another activity. Or you could have a guest trainer from another organization if you think it's relevant and good addition to your activity. So you don't have to have a combination between program and partner countries in one application, but you can. You can even have more than one partner. You can have even all partners of ESA involved. We had that last year in one event, again in Southeast Asia, where we had a representation from all of these organizations in one event, because they happen to have some members on the ground in the region, and we were able to combine them. So they shared all their perspectives on alumni networks and how each organizations work. And one more confusion that there was in the morning was that some people thought that they need to have in their project budget, their project budget for their project has to be 50% dedicated to partner and 50% dedicated to program countries, but that's not the case. You don't have to have in one application 50% of your budget dedicated to program countries and 50% to partner countries. What we mean by this is a general split of the whole entire budget that we have for projects on ESA level. Means all of the projects that will be granted, the pool of experts and the responsible team will make sure that there is a proportion between projects that have been benefiting members or organizations in partner countries and in program countries. So just to clarify that, you can still apply just, let's say, for Mexico, and you don't have to have a Mexico and then another country, let's say in Europe, involved in the same project if you don't want to. So I think that's from my side what I wanted to add in from the morning session so that it's clear for everybody. And if you have any more questions, please, you can put them down in the chat now. One last thing that I would mention is the matchmaking process that we discussed as a level, which could help you potentially connect with other organizations if you don't know anyone, because that might be an issue at the moment, that you might not know anyone. But we have actually brainstormed this in the meeting, and we don't really know how it's going to be put in place at the moment, but there were some suggestions to have some sort of like a board where people could just submit an idea of the event or activity they are planning to do and look for partners openly like that, or having a submission form where you could just submit your idea, the region and the partner you're looking for to connect with, and then have some sort of like a matchmaking process involved. So there will be some practical help to ensure that you have a partner for your activity as well. And I think that's all from my side, Georgiana. If you have anything else to mention, the floor is yours.
No, so Pavan, if you can go to the next slide, you will see my email address there. If you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer your questions via email. And think about the fact that all ESA members organization will be looking for partners. So this is a situation that will be ripe for everyone to find potential partners for projects. Sometimes you'll just have to be on board with other people's ideas. Sometimes they'll be on board with yours, and then sometimes you'll create something together. So I don't think this will be a problem in practice. And for specific questions about partners in different countries, you can also approach us with questions about that, and we can try to help you until we have more elaborated plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Georgiana and Lucia, and for everybody who have attended this event. I hope it's been useful, especially in terms of both the structure and also the whole funding mechanism change. I think it's critical, and you are the ones who are going to execute a lot of activities at the ground level. So I hope you see the value in our thinking, and hopefully you all agree to this kind of a setting, the way we are moving forward. We think that in this way we would be able to proceed further and hopefully become much more sustainable as an organization. So we really hope to seek and get all your support moving forward, and we'll keep you updated with what's happening with ESA in general, and also with the whole structural change in EMA. And you'll also hear on this more or less what's been the update in the last 1 year. I hope that many of you have seen already the GA recording. For those of you who haven't, just let us know. We are more than happy to publish it on the website so that you can see the online GA, what we had also shared, which also aligns with what has been presented today.
I think what you mean here is about a community portal. So if you have not noticed or you have any questions about that, we don't have access to community portal at the moment. We do I want to put in place a form where we can capture those who are trying to sign up for the community platform at the moment. We are hoping to have some sort of a community platform when the new service provider is in place. But because we don't have the information yet on the specifics of that contract, we can't tell you when that is going to happen. For the time being, if there is anybody who wants to register as a member, they should approach the community development team, and the community development team should keep the track of those intended members. So later on, we're going to inform them when the community portal is up and running. For the moment and for the time being, we can add them to the Facebook group if they're interested in the EMA active members, so that they can get some updates. But also you can mention, if you have anybody like that around you, please mention to them that we also have a newsletter, and they can register through EMA website to the newsletter stating that they're a member, and then they will also receive information through there. There is a monthly newsletter coming out from EMA side. So also, if you are not part of newsletter, please sign up too. I think that was the last question. So I think we have answered that. And of course, we will share with you the presentation slides. So all the participants will receive the presentation slides as well. So you will get access and information about our emails and the forms, etc. So I think that's all. I thank you very much, Rojana and Pavan, for taking your time as well, for presenting, and thank you everybody for participating.
But all in all, thank you so much for your time and effort. Hopefully we keep in touch in the same active way, and hopefully see some of you in person soon when we organize our main event, when we have more clarity. Thank you all then, and any suggestions, anything, just reach out to Georgiana, Lucia, or myself. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, and have a nice rest of your Saturday.